thank you for coming. We enjoy your presence, and I hope you also enjoy this presentation. So our luncheon events takes place every 6 months, so in the spring and the fall. We don't have a specific event program at this point for spring, but something very exciting we are trying to put together. But today we are extremely excited to have a very distinguished panel with us, and I'm going to leave it to Matt Morris. Again, he is the board member of the Center for Christianity Business. Also, he is the former CEO of Stuart Tyler. I think everybody knows Matt, right? Matt is very popular. Okay. I'm going to leave it to Matt to introduce our speakers, and you can also find the bios on the programs. Okay, Matt?
Thank you, Ernest. Okay. Is it easier to hear in here than it was at lunch? Well, as Ernest said, I'm Matt, and not everybody knows me. So anyway, but I'm honored to be here. I actually spend most of my time these days trying to look at broken places and how they're redeemed. And I think the business community is the best place to do that, in summary. So I spent my career in public companies, in private companies, nonprofits, several leadership positions. Spend most of my time now doing consulting, advising, investing in different businesses. So I see kind of a portfolio of companies around not only the U.S., but globally. And so I've had the insight to see how faith integrates in some of those situations more than others. And so it's an honor to come and talk and lead about that discussion. When Ernest asked me to lead on this, again, you all didn't want to hear from me. So I just called 3 friends. And so I am looking forward to the conversation because these are 3 gentlemen that I respect what they're doing, and they have incredible stories, and really I'm honored that they would take their time to come and talk with us a little bit. So again, Ernest has the bios in front of you, you can see, but just starting on the right down here with Patrick, and you see his bio there, but Frontier Operators, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about that company, but a tech entrepreneur startup, sold that, now works with, honestly, a lot of students. His top 4 classes here at HCU, I think he's from Seattle, came down, I think, top 4 classes in the last 24 hours here on campus. And we'll talk a little bit about what that student journey is and leadership journey is in faith and business. But he and I met we were in a group in New York a while back, and just appreciate what he's up to. He has 5 kids. 5 kids. 5 kids. See, I have 4, so anybody with more than me, I always think that it's a lot more. But yeah. So anyway, but we're glad he is here. Cody Nath, head of RTI Technologies in the Woodlands, and Cody has been a long-term friend, and really, as I think of people that have pursued the journey of integrating faith and business well, Cody comes to the top of the list, and he'll tell a little bit about his company. You think as a refining technology and services company that you wouldn't necessarily say, oh, this is a redemptive venture, but Cody's figured out how to do that and do that well, and I think you'll enjoy hearing from him. And then Craig Whitlock as well. Craig and I were sitting next to each other at a lunch, and we figured out some odd way that we had both looked at an agribusiness in Kenya, and had several areas of overlap, and I've really enjoyed getting to know Craig and his journey. He worked with Samaritan's Purse in Africa, has a new business venture now, but just had great theology around work and business, and the idea of really, creation and understanding what that looks like. So we're happy to have all of them here, and I think you're going to learn something, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the questions. And the first one I thought we do is kind of the start. We're here, and this is called, Ernest, the Center for Christianity in Business, right? So the first question is, what does that mean? So maybe tell us a little bit about your business and what, if anything, Christianity has to do with it. So Patrick, you want to start?
Yes, we can start. All right, we got it. How you guys doing today? Good? I feel like I'm in a class again, just a little bit of a bigger classroom. Yeah, great question. When I think about how does Christianity affect what we do in business, it kind of goes back to, for me, I don't separate ministry and business. The Greek word, to give you a Greek little lesson here, the word avodah, it's used 143 times in the Old Testament, and that word was translated as work, as service, and as worship. And they don't separate those. We invented the word ministry in the year 1300 in the English language. And so we're fighting against hundreds of years of bad translation. And so I view our work as an extension of worship to God. And so when I do excellent work, that is putting the kingdom of God on display wherever we are. And because this is about global business, I'll just throw in, that is one of the best witnesses to who this God that we serve and what his kingdom is about, is when we put our excellent work that looks different than the world's way of extracting value and just getting as much as we can. It looks more like sacrifice, and it looks more like a kingdom that tastes better than the wine of this world, if I could put it like that. And so I see that integrated concept of faith and work permeating any operation. It could be a healthcare, nonprofit, all of that. You're going to hear better examples from these two guys. I'm going to give up the mic to Cody.
I'm learning too. This is great. I should have come to your classes. I didn't know the Greek word. As you wouldn't expect a refining services guy to know a lot of Greek. Hey, our business is called Refined Technologies. We are a downstream oil and gas services business primarily. We do a few other things, but that's what we do. So what that means is oil and gas production. We were talking about it at lunch. It's pretty much, there's a lot of places, but from Corpus Christi to Mississippi, it's pretty much one constant block of this. When those folks shut down for turnarounds and maintenance, we come in and we have some patented processes that we help them do that cleaner, safer, faster. So nothing inherently spiritual about refinery chemical cleaning. And so I would answer that question maybe in two ways, Matt. I think there's two kinds of contexts. One is, what is our role as Christians in business? And then the second one is really a little bit different. It's like, hey, to the extent that we have agency and we can design organizations, how do we do that? How do we create organizations that do that? So Refined Technologies, our mission statement, and this goes, my dad started the business in 2001 and I joined in 2006. But even before that, our mission statement at our sister company was honor God always, help people develop, pursue excellence, and earn a profit. So we had these 4 pillars of our mission statement in order, but all critical to the success of the deal. We get asked, are we a Christian business? And I think that really goes back to the first part. I don't think that you can be a Christian business. I don't think that businesses develop relationships with Jesus. I think people do. And so I think as Christians working in businesses that have explicit faith motivation, we say we operate under biblical principles, that's what we would say, or people that work in an organization that has no faith explicit part of it. Our call is to discipleship. At lunch today, Bryce asked us an awesome question. He's like, he basically asked the whole thing. How do you do this? And I thought he was the CEO of something. He's a freshman here at HCU, and so I super impressed. I don't think I asked that question when I was a freshman. I know I didn't ask that question when I was a freshman. I wish I did, because I would say the answer to that is really is discipleship. It's a journey, and I wish I had started sooner, asking myself, what does somebody who's following Jesus, how do we do that in all of these contexts, not just in our personal life, our family life, but also in the workplace. And so we can get into more examples of that. But I think there's those two things. How do we design organizations to do creative, redemptive work in the world? And then how, as Christians, do we do creative, redemptive work regardless of what organization we're a part of?
Yeah. Excellent. My name's Craig Whitlock again. These guys said so much so well, so I'll just keep this a little bit more brief on my side. Colossians 3:23 and 24 was very clear. We do all things as unto him, recognizing that we don't serve men, but God. But then it also continues and says something that's wonderful. We're going to receive our reward from him, which means that as I'm operating and working, we have assets in Nova Scotia, 2 facilities that are producing for European clients. And Others products go to Turkey. So now I have two different groups potentially, some Muslim, some agnostic, some atheist, some Christian, whatever. How am I supposed to respond to them as image bearers? You know, you went back to a Hebrew word. I'll tell you another one. It's Bitzalu, in his image. But it literally means made in his shadow. That's Genesis 1:26. When we're made in his shadow, that means that there's light that is existing. So we're supposed to be a light in the workforce. And how do I service the workforce? By loving my neighbor, recognizing them as people who are image bearers. In other words, they're going to cast a shadow as well. And that shadow should be emblematic of who God is. So what we try to encourage our family and our friends and our employees and our clients to recognize is that greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. We can have great conversations about the truth of God while we're also actually deploying great products for the benefit of stewardship. So that's just a rough around.
It's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I think in summary, you know, what I've heard, and I think we've had this conversation, the world tends to have this divide between the sacred and the secular. And you're often asked, is this something that's the secular world or is it the sacred world? And I think the common thread that you've heard all these businessmen talk about is that's a false dichotomy. It's not a sacred secular divide. And Charles Spurgeon, I'm going to read this quote so I don't mess it up. It says, "To a man who lives unto God, nothing is secular. Everything is sacred. He puts on his workday garment, and it is a vestment to him. He sits down to his meal, and it's a sacrament. He goes forth to his labor, and therein exercises the office of priesthood." So I think that is the first, and we'll dig into some more of these questions. But I think at the end of the day, when we talk about Christianity, is that these are business people living out their life as Christ and seeing their business as, as how we establish God's kingdom here on earth. And so anyway, I look forward to diving into that. And maybe with that, we'll go to this next question. And we've talked about this idea as CEOs, as leaders of organizations. There are many constituents you're trying to make happen. You've got employees, you've got regulators, you've got customers, you've got shareholders, you've got your family, you've got families of employees. How do you think about your purpose and your bottom line impact? And maybe if there is a framework of how you think through decision making to determine really for all these people pulling on and often wanting a decision that's different than the other constituent, right? Because that is often the case by definition. But maybe talk a little bit about a framework you use to make those decisions as you think about bottom line results of an organization. So, Craig, you want to start?
No, it's a great question. I'll say that, we lived overseas in Southern Africa for about 4 years, and then another portion of Africa for about another year, and this is all for business purposes. Then we also did a lot of work in the Middle East. I speak Hebrew as a second language, so I get to, work with and walk alongside Jewish, Reformed, and Orthodox individuals. Some of the commonalities I've seen out of those two different areas was this, and I'll just take a highlight going back to Islam or Muslims. They would move into a community. There might have been no Muslims there. So when they moved into that community, they set up a business like entrepreneurship. That's the second thing they do out of 5. And then the third thing, they start, having children, and then with their children, they're employing them in businesses. And then the fourth thing they wind up doing, they hire people from the community to actually become participants in that business. But they do something that's fifth, it's critical that I found. And that's that they invite many of the workers from that business into their home for special events. So for me, as a premise of this call, my decision-making process, again, I go back to the image bearer, is this. I look at many of the employees. Are they people that I would invite into my home, and am I treating them as people who need to sit at the table with me? People that we can invest in. Now, we see something in Jeremiah 29th chapter. We all know Jeremiah 29:11, right? It's the plans to prosper you, plans to give you hope in the future. But he spoke about something in the first 10 verses. He said, build homes, plant gardens, entrepreneurial, get married, have children. Now, I'm not trying to broadcast, all y'all have children, and those of you who don't have children, you're not doing God's will. I'm not saying that at all. But there is a process to this. And they are acting out something that I would consider more like thermodynamics, something that's irrefutable like physics. they're impacting the community because they wind up setting up schools and healthcare and philanthropic societies like we're all trying to do here. Many times we start looking at that word call, either vocational, it's Latin, and then it's also Anglo-Saxon, as if it's sacred, like was stated again. Our decision-making process is this: everything we do is truly sacred. And the way that we build this out for our little field of entrepreneurial endeavors is to instill in every one of them that they are someone that needs to be seated at the table with me as an equal, with all of my other business partners as an equal, that my clients who are either Muslim or they are potentially agnostic or atheists are going to be loved and cherished as image bearers. So that's, again, is the premise of where I start and our business starts overall.
Yeah, this is a fun question. When you think about profit, so I do a lot of impact investing. We think about the quadruple bottom line of lots of different things besides just the economic and like the financial. In fact, one of the things we talked about yesterday, we looked at some impact investment side by side and said, hey, this one got this return, this one had that return. And as a trick question, I said to students, who had the better return? I didn't say financial return, I just said who had the better return. And it was, you could see that everyone got tense, like, ooh, I don't know what the right answer is here. Because business, when you operate in the marketplace, you have the ability to affect the social well-being and just the, I'll say, the dignity of someone's life and value as a person. Like more than just the paycheck. The paycheck is one, but just the respect of being able to be treated with dignity in and of itself is a very, it's a very, I'll say like Jesus did a rebuke to the culture that he was in. That is many times a rebuke to the natural, normal way that a lot of culture and the way business is done around the world. And so what we've seen is like, when you care about the person, you have to have enough profit. I think your question was about the bottom line, right? Profit in a business is like blood in a body. You need to have enough to live, but you also don't need too much necessarily, right? This is where as a business, if you have a lot of profit, you can begin to leverage the excess to do some really amazing things. We've seen companies like offer healthcare and like after school programs and childcare in communities where that is not the norm and that's not expected. And so that business was able to do a whole lot more, but that same business, I'll share, found themselves financially with not enough profit. And so they had to cut back. And so there are entrepreneurs and businesses that try to do amazing things, but as a business, my engine needs to start with the basics, right? Can I deliver the service to get the pipeline going? Can I keep my clients happy enough to have my baseline? And then in and through that, that can be your witness to your staff. And then if God pours out some more blessing on your business, sometimes that excess gives you even more chance to show what a different, maybe a kingdom-like culture could look like. So I think you got to be thinking about the bottom line as an essential. Because we've seen people over-index on the other stuff and then they suffer on the bottom line. So you can't do both or one better than the other and not and expect to have the same impact in that community. So that's just a couple of different ways to answer that.
Thinking about how to answer this question, I think that time matters. I mean, like if I'm thinking about return, the return over time matters and what your time horizon is. If we're trying to make a return in the next week, we're going to be forced to make a lot of decisions that look a lot different. I think that the beauty of discipleship is that it is a long, the long obedience in the same direction. And that's how we think about our business. So I'd say another thing that matters is capital structure. To the extent that your shareholders demand returns on a quarter or on a series basis, you're going to be forced to make decisions around operations and operating practices that are going to drive your cultural impact. So for us, we're blessed. I mean, I am the shareholder, and so and the CEO. So sometimes my shareholder hat and CEO hat argue with each other a lot. So, but I get to determine those things, and so. I don't know. I think you said that businesses can have too much profit. I've never been a part of one of those, so I don't know what that experience. That might be that I might need to go to the class on that. But what I would say is, I do think that we talk a lot in our business that we're not trying to maximize profit. Maximizing profit in the short term, for sure, is where I think you start to take corners. You start to treat people differently. You start to treat your customers differently. But I started with our mission statement, honor God always being the most important part, earn a profit being the fourth one. But I will tell you, without profit, you guys, this is not like going to blow you guys away. Without profit, you're done. I wake up every morning thinking about how do we add more customer value. I do think about how can we use our business more redemptively, but the engine stops and the impact stops and our employees' jobs stop if we don't add more customer value. Matt said really nice things about how we've thought about this. We steal most things. We come like biblically positively stealing. I don't know the Greek word for that, but from other people. And I heard that profit is the best measure of our value to a customer. So if you don't have significant profits, and I'd say growing profits, you should ask yourself, am I really delivering value to my customer? And is this going to really last for the long term? And I think from an investor perspective, or certainly from an operating perspective, we pay a lot of attention to that. And so I think the other stakeholders, your employees benefit when your business is secure, it's stable, you can offer bonuses, you can offer promotions, you can offer new opportunities, they can grow, they can support their families. To the extent that you don't have profits, that becomes less true. Certainly investors and shareholders and your community and ultimately your clients are going to benefit. They're going to pay you more when you can deliver incrementally more and more value. And so I think that those things all do fit together. And I think that the time horizon you're delivering those things over is really important.
Yeah, well said. I want to come back to a little bit of that, but just to engage maybe the students in the room a little bit more. Patrick, so we hear about this idea of faith in business and that can be unified. But there's probably some students in the audience that are faith oriented as they think about the business world, and maybe some of this is new, maybe some of it's surprising, maybe it's not. But you talk to a lot of students now, and your kind of current phase and current business. What do you think the general sentiment is for students looking at the business community? What is their perception of business overall, and how that business influences or impacts the world?
Yeah. So before we launched this podcast called Buried Talent, if you want to check it out, I did what every great millennial and Gen Z person does. We did a deep research query against ChatGPT to ask some big questions, right? Who likes some ChatGPT deep research? Any fans in the audience here? There's a few, okay. Deep research saves you probably 10 or 20 or 50 hours of research and compresses it into 5 minutes. So I asked, what are some of the most pressing questions of young adults in the business school and even just generally Christians in college these days? And it came back with some of what are the most common questions and stresses. And one of the number one things is, how can I think about serving God and make a bunch of money, which Jesus says you can't do both. You have to pick one, kind of. Yeah, you can't make one of them your Lord. How do I think about serving God and making money? And then also the fact that it's a really difficult job market right now, and it's hard to even get a call back on an interview. And these are some of the pressing questions is, I have a hard time getting my first job out of college. And so they're asking is, God, are you calling me into the business world? Or is it more spiritual to do something in a nonprofit or a church or a, air quotes, ministry job, right? And so I think that question of calling plagues a lot of students as I'm having these conversations. And it's the anxiety that leads not to faith and believing that my work matters for the kingdom. It's an anxiety around, I got to eat, I got to make enough money. Raise your hand if you're a student and you plan on working a full-time job after you graduate. Hands up for that. So you plan on having a job? Okay, cool. So if you don't have that lined up yet, the challenge for you is, how do I prepare myself while I'm in university and get clarity on how that is going to be a part of fulfilling God's mission for me, even if it doesn't look like the ministry or the mission that maybe your pastor talks about. There's a very holy ambition of bringing your value into a company and serving customers well and loving Excel and delivering value well. So I would just say the stress and the worry from students that I'm seeing across the country so far is, how do I serve God in the marketplace and not just become a money-loving heathen in the process? And that's a question for all of us to think about, regardless of where we are in our career.
Yep. So let's go. Part of this idea, you all have had worked in international context, and we talked some a bit about this, but maybe Craig, you alluded to additional complications maybe related to cultural differences in business practices. And so just a question of how you see your biblical values modeled in that cross-cultural context. So as people even think about their careers going from here, do I do business? Do I open up an office overseas? How does that come into play when we are a very kind of, American-centric, we understand how business looks over here, whether we're honestly going on the mission field or opening up an office in a different area, that starts to have a different context. So I'd love to hear you all just, talk about why you decided to do business outside the U.S. and how that may change or not change, how that's affected your business.
Yeah, that's a great question. As I think back over the time, you can have so many different people from so many different cultures, different countries, and they will interpret words very differently. Just at a high level, when we're living in South Africa, there is a word called LOOP. We say loop, but it actually means a trek. My children misread that, and they thought that it was an actual loop in this jungle-like area, and it was actually a trek through some dangerous parts where they ran into baboons, unfortunately. So language matters. We wound up transposing our English language onto a Dutch or Afrikaans style language. Something similar for me, just in business, what I wound up doing was this. I asked my CFO, who happened to come out of Kenya, I said, would you mind doing this? Versus, or excuse me, could you do this? And he was modestly offended. And I asked him, I said, why are you offended about the word use of could you do this? He said, because it implies ability, which is typically negative. He said, I would prefer if you would ask me, would you do this? So those types of contexts would wind up perverting or potentially damaging a long-term business opportunity that could benefit the entire entity just based on one word. And then if it's not addressed, that continues to metastasize or go worse. So that's just, two simple statements as far as how language can definitely dictate how you think. The other thing is the Western context is this. We're always on time. Isn't that right? So I go to the Middle East. If I say something's supposed to start at 2 p.m. and people start arriving at 2:30, I start showing some level of, angst and disapproval. Well, then that means that they recognize that I am not really understanding their culture is another component. And one of the times that this happened, we're traveling in Israel, we're meeting with some heads of state there. And during this time, one of the gentlemen showed up late, which is fine to some degree. We got that through. But there were statements about actual meetings at this time, there are statements about, how the cellular service and how, about this. There are certain statements about how the commercial entity and I have to apologize. So at the bottom line is, and I apologize for just kind of getting a brain cramp, while we're sitting in there at this delegated meeting, one of the individuals made a statement that was very simple. They said that we are misusing the American language, the English language, and it's not one of, sorry about this. There's a, yeah.
You're going to come back to it?
Yeah, I'm going to come back. I apologize.
Yes, it's good. Let me take it in a little. Oh, you and Mike. Yeah. I think probably. I do talk lots. So we have an open work floor plan, and I think the accounting team likes it on the days that I'm out of the office. I think so. On how we do business in about 20 countries, and that's growing. And we've chosen to be in those countries largely because we want to continue to grow our market and be able to serve our customers. And so many of our customers, Exxon, Shell, BP, Chevron, I mean, these are global companies. And so to serve them well, you serve them globally. Our largest customer in the U.S. is actually Motiva, because they're the largest refinery in the U.S., or single site. And that is, they are wholly owned by Aramco. So the connection there makes sense. If we're serving that site well, they're requesting and asking for us to go to the Middle East. So I'm going to tell the story about how that context comes into play and how we can be, salt and light in lots of different contexts. We have at RTI, I didn't say this at the beginning, but, we have an Honor God Always mission statement, but we have people from, all faiths that work at RTI, all I don't test this, but I'm assuming most Protestant denominations, Roman Catholic, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, and none of the above, and probably a few that I'm missing. And what I would say is, like, as a Christian leading an organization, I would hope that our company is the best place for anyone to work, regardless of their faith. That they feel known, that they feel cared for, that they feel trusted, that they feel that their work is important, that they feel an important part of the mission, and that would be, and I would hope that would be true. And I think that they would say that. So one of the things we do at RTI is this is going to get to the international part, I promise. We do second chance hiring here in Houston, just south of the George Bush Airport. We have about 80 guys that came out of Texas Department of Criminal Justice that work in our facility. They do mechanical work for us in our shop. It's an awesome place, and it's really cool. And it's I don't know if all those nice things Matt said were true at the beginning, but I do think we are one of the best second chance employers in the city. And I wish that wasn't true. I wish there were more second chance people, and we advocate for that, and we talk a lot about that, and we actually do, advocacy in DC around the issue. But so we have a Saudi partner. So this is a new thing. A couple years ago, we have a partner in Saudi Arabia. They came over to attend our annual summit event where we bring our whole team together. We actually have optional praise and worship for people, but then we have different speakers. George W. Bush spoke last year, so it's a big event for us. They came though to our distribution center where they saw these guys. These are four guys, the leaders of the company, the family that owns the business, absolutely conservative Muslims. They come to our business and our mission statement's on the wall. I was pretty nervous about this. I'm like, I don't really know how this is going to go. And these guys do a Devo every morning, and it is not multi-denominational it is absolutely Pentecostal. So and it's awesome. And so but these guys from Saudi came, and their feedback afterwards was, they told one of their kind of the guy that runs our international business, Jerome. They're like, hey, Jerome, we think God is blessing your business because of the way that you're blessing these guys. And they're like, we see what you're doing for these guys, and we think this is why God is blessing your business. And that's the word they use. And so, I don't know where that goes. I don't know what our faith relationship and faith conversations go from there. But I think that was like God giving me a lesson. Like, hey, be faithful to me, honor us in your practices, do really excellent work, and treat people really well, and then I'll try to take care of the other parts of that. And so I think that's the context that we're trying to do this internationally.
And I don't mean to do an attempt to, in my mind, I had a beautiful swan dive, and I hit a belly flop. Okay, so I'd like to say it's PTSD because I had my military service. No, it was just nerves. But let me just go back to this quickly. So while we're in Israel, one of the things that I did see was that the way that we put on the Israeli culture or any other culture, our own culture, is by this. We go in and we have a wonderful meeting. The meeting that was occurring was with Orange, the cellular service there. And at that cellular service, what we did find was that there was a woman VP. She did outstanding work. But we were asking about how did you get cell phones into every child's hand underneath the age of 12? Are you marketing directly to those children? How's your marketing practices there? This is back in 2005, right during the Gaza pullout. So it's before you all had cell phones. So I know it's a very different time period. And she looked at us and she said, do you not understand that whenever we see an advert that's actually targeting children, we know that that's from the West? She said, we as Eastern-minded individuals, we target what they call the head of household, the man. And then once he adopts it, he pushes it down to the family. So that's how they actually do it. We had to understand that, okay, well, as you start trying to move any type of product, in moving that product, you have to be sensitive to actually how you market it. And the way that we marketed it was to children, but the way that they accept or adopt a product is by marketing to the head of household. And again, that's from the woman who was a senior VP of Orange Cellular.
And these stories of like cross-cultural, I know part of the reason why you came here is to hear some examples, but these cross-cultural stories, knowing what like the water that you're looking through, if you're a fish and you're swimming in some water, it's a cultural lens that you don't even think about. One of the reasons why your question, Matt, was why do we go and do business in these parts of the world? One of the reasons why, I think it's the intersection of two things. It's market opportunities that look interesting from an economic and business standpoint, intersected with some type of community impact and transformation that we would want to see happen in that part of the world. So when we talk about with frontier operators, we talk about going to markets that are on the frontier, and we don't just mean economically, but we mean like also socially, spiritually. Like in other words, it's hard to be an employee in this market. And I'll give you one example. In the MENA region, so Middle East, North Africa, a company, an entrepreneur came to us about 5 years ago. He had learned the language there. He's an American. And he said, I think I've identified a business opportunity. And so he was pitching us kind of like sort of like not really believing in his own pitch, but we're like, this guy's onto something. And he wanted to do an architectural firm that was near shore. So he was going to provide architectural design services to the North American market, right? And he was going to do that closer to the time zone and service that they would expect from like an American who's actually in that market, but also with better quality than you'd get if you went distant shore, like let's say in India or China or somewhere else or Indonesia. And so he said, I'm going to do nearshore architectural modeling. And 5 years later, he has 50 employees and he's expanding to 150 employees. He's in a heavily dense city and they're the largest employer of architects in their city. Now, this is a part of the world where you get ground down by your boss, and that is a normal and expected part of the work culture. And what he does is one of his core values is to be remembered by love. Like that's one of the values. And they talk about values, one of the 9 or 10 values every week. They bring up, here's a value, let's talk about it. And there are employees that come to tears because it's the first time that a manager has ever shown genuine love and interest in them as a human, let alone an architect. And so just imagine the power, the potency of not only finding a business opportunity, you can find those all over the world, but doing so in a way that puts the kingdom of God on display, the values of the king that we serve in a tangible way that I feel it when I show up 40 hours a week. That's the kind of difference that we want to make in these markets where we go and serve. And the why behind it is because we've already found out about what that kingdom's like. And hopefully we're doing that in Houston. Hopefully we're doing that in Seattle, where I'm from. But hopefully we're doing that in a lot of the countries that haven't even known about the Lord before. So that's just an example of like market opportunity, but also just making the environment taste like a bit like heaven.
Yeah.
This is not meant to be discouraging, but it is meant to be like we're in a business school here. So I will just say it as a piece of reality. Doing work internationally is really hard. We didn't go outside of North America for 16 years. And even now it's still like we're doing work, I said, like in probably 18 to 20 countries this year. It's really hard. And almost every one of those is a separate business is how you have to think about it. So we're really running like 25 different businesses now because of that. And the complexity to do that, at least in our context and in most of the contexts I've experienced, are pretty challenging. And so I'd say like, not to say don't do it, but I'd say it is to like understand the cost and understand the commitment to that and make sure that your value prop is really strong and tested before you go. Because it is a hard thing to do, to overcome some of the cultural, language, customs, legal challenges that Craig described, and then just the reality that business in general is hard. You're throwing on a lot of layers of complexity on top of that. So that's just my caution in the excitement and the potential. It's the count the cost piece on that. So
Totally. Way more failures than successes, but you'll have to find us in the hallway to hear more about those.
Yeah, that's sure. No, Patrick, I forget who told me a while back that they said if your business was a scratch and sniff sticker, would it reek of the kingdom of God? And I think that's as people dig in, right? As people dive in, whether it's stated on the wall or not, right? But does it reek of the kingdom of God? I think it's possible. But hey, I want to have time for questions at the end. But so maybe one more, and then we'll go to questions. But just as you think about students, maybe some people that are entering the job market, maybe some advice you'd have for them, and also, hit about a little bit about your values and how those are articulated, because I think that's one thing I want just to provide a window into if there are people out here that are looking at companies or looking at opportunities, what they could consider. But again, from your perspective, what would you say to the students in the room that are looking to do, what with their degree coming out of here? So,
Yeah, I'll start off and I'll also keep this modestly brief, but you know, do not go into anything because of fear and don't avoid going into something because of fear. I tell people that, I've had a dog called fear on my backside and I kept running, kept running. So for someone like me, I need to slow down. For someone else, their dog called fear is right in front of them and they don't go forward at all. And so, understand a little bit more about who you are and who you are in the Messiah first and foremost. The next thing I would encourage is just take ultimate ownership. Be very generous or liberal in the way that you share successes, but own every failure yourself, because everything that happens or fails to happen is a reflection of you. It's a reflection of me, whether I do it in my house or outside my house. So just take that absolute ownership, but then live with this guiding principle, which I clumsily was trying to communicate it, and that's just demonstrate a love and honor for people. In Romans, the 12th chapter, it is an encouragement that you out honor the other, that you give such grace because people will fail, but it is beautiful. I would encourage you as a summary with all of that, persevere, and not sound like Churchill, but just never, never, never give up. I get it. There are a lot of challenges, but there are also a lot of benefits. Right now you have an accelerated culture that in a moment, what's going on in Afghanistan down to Perth, Australia, just in a moment. That's a benefit. That's also a downside, but take the benefits there because you can understand the regulatory environment that you're going to be moving into. You said it so well. You have basically 20 different businesses around the globe and they operate differently, but you can understand it. Whereas someone else from my generation, the 70s growing up in the 80s, early 80s, I couldn't tell you that. I was still filling out financial forms with a number 2 pencil, okay, waiting for someone to send a response back that would come 3 weeks later. So just take advantage of what you have advantage of, but just do not operate out of fear. Okay.
I at no point when I was in college or probably for the first 5 years out of school did I think I would work it as a contractor in an oil and gas services business. It wasn't on my radar. It wasn't on my, if I'd had a career counselor, that wouldn't have been part of it. But what I do think, in hindsight, looking back and trying to evaluate this is I was just open or faithful to the next open step to where I felt like God was calling me. And so whether, I think it's pretty impossible, well, not impossible. I'm sure God can do it. But at least in my experience, my freshman year of college, I really did not know what I would do or where I would do it. And I think ultimately I could have been successful and happy and following the Lord in a few different areas, but this was the path that he followed. So my first piece of advice, in addition to agreeing strongly with everything Craig said, is just be open to what God is doing and take that step and work really hard at it and pursue it to his glory. I think a second, maybe more practical, more tactical, not practical, more tactical piece of advice would be, is what I talked to Bryce about, is try to understand the businesses that you're going to join. What are their values? What do they value? Everybody has a nice website. I mean, if they don't, that should be a real caution flag to you. But assuming they have a nice website, talk to people who work there, find out what it's like, find out what your first role is going to be and who your boss is going to be. So much of that matters. I'm going to do, Matt didn't tell me that I can do it. We're always looking for great people. But we put to these is a version of a praxis book. We put together a playbook that are we get very explicit about our values. I think more and more companies I see are doing work like this. You can grab one of these if you care about it, just as an example more than anything. But how do these companies think? How do they value? How do they develop people? I think those are the things that I would be really, really looking for as I'm getting out of school.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's great. I'm surprised no students just jumped out of their chair. He's giving you something. Come up here. Come on up here. We're just
get it later.
All right. Cool. I'll give you three little things real quick. So because the job market it's almost twice as hard. It went from 3 to almost 6% for new grads. The unemployment rate jumped up. It's harder to get a job. And I want to think why? What is that? And the 3 little things I'll share with you before I'll give you some resources to help are a lack of experience. You're going up against people that already have been in market, that already have a little bit of experience under their belt. So that's a difficult thing. Also, how do you position yourself as delivering some kind of outcomes for that company? I love what you just said, Cody, because if you know the vision and the goals of that company, can you articulate why you have, like, why that company can benefit from your skills, the value you can add? And here's the third thing. It is an indictment on this generation, Gen Z, that, oh, they're so short-lived, they're only focused on kind of getting in here and getting back out. And let me tell you, if you understand and get clarity on your vision and God's marketplace calling for you, you'll be able to sell your longer term vision and how working at that company and developing value over the long haul for that company is actually helping you with your personal goals. But if you don't know what those goals are, you need to take a second and kind of figure out, especially if you're still here at HCU, what is that marketplace calling that I have? Is now a good time to pull up that slide, to pull it up there on the screen? I don't know in the back there if you want to pull it up. So that QR code will send a couple of resources to you. So if you're a student in here, pull out your phone, your third arm, that's your third appendage, pull it out. And that QR code, we're going to give you a couple free resources. So it's not like free at a career fair. Like, here's, like, I do have some swag if you want. You can find me for that. But that resource we're going to send you is, you're just going to put in your name and your email, and then you tell us if you want to spend time with you after you take the Clarity of Calling assessment. So it's a little assessment we want to give to you, and then there's a few things inside of a community that we have where we do like career coaching and stuff. So just let us know if you want to chat about where you're headed in your career. You can grab that code, and then I'll be up here. So come on up. Don't be shy. Cody's got some sweet resources. We got stuff to give you. So that's my quick answer for maybe it's a long answer for what students should do to get ready.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think we probably all talk to students or young adults navigating the careers. A lot of people want like God to make the decision for them, and I often tell people, God's very interested in giving you wisdom and discernment for you to make that decision. And so really, how you pray and how you think about where God has you. Hopefully you've seen some great opportunities of people passionate about the economics of righteousness, of looking at a business community and looking at capitalism as a way to enhance the kingdom of God and to advance the kingdom of God, not only here in the U.S. and abroad. So with that being said, we've got time for maybe a couple questions. And I know Ernest told me he has a class he's got to teach, so we can't take too long. But there's some questions out there that we want to address. From the back row, 2 competing questions from coworkers. We know who's going to get the mic. So that's her.
Thanks. So this question is for Craig. So you mentioned that one word could ruin a relationship. And I'm just curious, what strategies or what thought process do you go through to try to recover and restore the relationship?
Yeah, how do you recover after that flop too? It's incredible. You have to stay with it. I think it's a great question. You have to be genuine, authentic. Again, it goes back for me to ownership in that, and then also demonstrating that there is a genuine interest to get to know that person, intimately. Because as much as they are your worker, they have a call in their home to do whatever and perform whatever function that God's designed them to do there. So I want them to go back home knowing that they not only have, my support and confidence and genuine approach and affection, but also that we're just trying to build one another up. And if that means that, maybe they misinterpreted what I stated, I still want to take ownership for that as well. So there's no dynamic strategy. I would just say it's just ground pounding tactics. Yeah.
Who else?
Thank you for the question.
Matt, thanks for putting on such a great panel. I feel like if a student walked in here at any point, they may have easily thought it was like hosted by the, School of Christian Thought, like a panel or something. So thank you panelists for just, clearly taking your just Christian worldview seriously and integrating it into your lives and businesses. So the question I would have is just, how do you all think about the idea of a business tithe? You talked about it a little bit, but like that concept of when it works, when it doesn't work, and how should we as professionals, and how should we, some of the kind of business students in here as future professionals think about that concept? And you said business tithe.
Business tithe.
Yeah, business tithe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this comes back to the capital structure question. I think, and I'll try to just be brief. We're an S corp, so what that means is taxes flow down, and so our business doesn't pay taxes. I pay it at a personal level, so I write all those taxes personally every quarter to every state that we do business in and all the countries and jurisdictions. So it's a very much an administrative lift. But in terms of the IRS, whether my business gives money away or I give money a personal way, it's indifferent. It's all in the same return. And so, like practically speaking, there isn't a difference between a personal tithe and a business tithe in our context. What we do though is we do give through a corporate generosity program, and we give significantly across several significant different categories. What I think about I think about it this way. Personally, I give to things, and then professionally through RTI, I give to things that the business can also integrate with. So second chance hiring being like a prime example. We also do work with World Vision in Honduras with clean water, where we take people down on trips. We have a child sponsorship program. So things that I can integrate through the business, we identify and we give through the business. And then on the other level, we do it. I think, so for me, there is no difference between a personal and a business tithe, because ultimately we do the same thing. We want to make sure we give, well above that. I do think that one of the things that I would just caution on the tithe, it's very easy, I think, to slip into like, we're going to work really hard and we're going to give money away. And I just think like that's true, but the work matters itself. And this is something that I talk about a lot with our team, is like, actually, the tithe is important, but only ultimately shareholders or ownership controls that piece. We all control how we show up every day, and that work is actually the part that's the most important. And the value we deliver our clients every day, that is the part that actually work is worship that we really want to emphasize. And so we try to actually de-emphasize a little bit what we give to, in the spirit of, hey, the actual work that we do matters. So that was a long answer. Sorry.
Oh, that's good. And I'll just say one example of a company that does this really well is in Arlington, not too far away from here. And they take a portion of their company profits and they actually give everybody an individual account to be able to deploy that as grants. So every employee, and that money goes up the longer that you're with the company. So when you're first there, it might be like, $300 or something. And basically they're teaching and training their 100 employees to be like kind of mini impact investors donating money, or you could say grant makers. But that's another model where it's like, I want to actually teach generosity, and I'm going to give you the training wheels for how to do it. And so there are companies that will set up their ways of teaching people how to be generous even with company profits. So that's another model to consider. But I want to just exclamation point Cody's answer, because sometimes we're like, oh, I'm just going to amass this big pile of money. Never mind how many bodies you buried and ran over to get to that pile of money. And it's like, well, wait a second. Like, was not the work part of the worship, or did you forget about that? And I just think we got to be really careful about separating generosity and like, oh, this is the good work, and this is just the stuff that has to happen to get there. I think God is much more interested in the 40 hours a week and how you serve and love customers than necessarily the $100 gift you might give away at the end of the year.
I would point you to the NCF website that Trey talked about. NCF has because it's going to matter in your context. They'll have lots of context about that. And then generous giving, even more on the personal side with journeys of generosity and other things, they can really help people go through a discipleship process around generosity. Those are both good resources.
Yeah, and I think not to be lost, because I think that may be a newer piece, right? But I often tell business leaders, hey, the most generous thing you can do is take care of your employees. Everybody kind of wants the wow factor, and I think American philanthropy is more honestly about us than it is about who we're trying to help. And so a lot of this, we get tied up in tax structures and what the tax benefit is. So really think holistically, like you've heard about business, et cetera, right? This is about living in a redemptive way, right? And understanding, again, all those constituents of the process. Are you living out the kingdom where it is? If there's excess capital, obviously, give it away places. But often the most generous thing you can do is to operate your business well. And so, other question? Yeah, let's go. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Young people graduating and finding a job. How important or what kind of leverage is it to their advantage or not to have gone through an internship?
Hey, yeah, there's how important is it to do an internship? I think internships are the biggest value to you is not if it's a paid internship. Some of you are laughing. You're like, oh, I did an internship, didn't get paid a dime. There's a little bit of value in the
It may not be the most generous thing in the world.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, yeah, good point. Paid internships are good if you're an employer sitting in the room. Pay these interns. But let me tell you, I think the value internships give employers an example of like, yeah, okay, there's 900 finance grads coming out of the Houston, market. They're all flooding the job market. I've got 600 of them applying for my finance analyst. Well, the question I'm asking as an employer is, well, which one of those 600 that put in an application has actually done anything that looks like what I would need and want? And so I'll encourage you students, yeah, the internships are even super competitive as well. I'll challenge you one step further. Forget the over reliance on just the formal internship. Why not figure out projects that can illustrate your value to learn about delivering a financial model to a client, looking at some books, setting up QuickBooks for a nonprofit that might need it? What can you do even more informally that demonstrates how you can deliver outcomes to an employer? You can do that without a formal internship. And so I think there's ways to get more creative and demonstrate your value that an employer would be interested in, even if you don't necessarily have the flagship internship that I could or couldn't get into. If that's,
I would just quickly say too, I think it's of critical importance to some degree if it's available. John Quincy Adams, if you recall, at the age of 14, he was apprenticing the ambassador to Russia, which is incredible. And then what did that do for him? It prepared him for future office. Benjamin Franklin apprenticed alongside his brother, I think at that time, in the publishing firm. So, that's apprenticeship, but it gave him another perspective on what else could be done from an engineering standpoint. So if it is available, definitely secure it.
Yeah.
Because at best, it's going to benefit you, but more than likely, it'll also benefit the employer, your future employer. Because then you're going to be taking from a diverse background of experiences and converging even if they have one moment.
It's the fun thing about panels. I'm going to take a counter view. I'm going to say I don't think internships matter very much, and so this is useful for you guys because you'll just walk away confused. I do think work experience matters a lot, but I think you can get that in a lot of different places. I love lots of work experiences where you've had to learn how to work hard, be resilient, and learn things. I think I coach actually until we hit about 300 people. I sat in every final interview with our company, so I have done a lot of interviewing, and experience is not like irrelevant, but sometimes it's even like wrong experience. Like I've got to go retrain you. What I like to see when I am interviewing somebody, and I'd say for any college graduate, I don't want to minimize your internship experience, but like it's not like going to be explicitly relevant to probably what we're trying to do. I want somebody that's going to look me in the eye and say, I work hard. I have this work experience. I've done these things. I've had to have grit. I've had to study hard. I've come from this. I'm here. I will work hard. I will learn. I will be here. I will show up. Nobody's going to outwork or outlearn me at this place. And I will say hired. So that's the cheat code to getting hired at our place. But like, we'll know day 2 whether you were serious about it, and you'll know day 365 whether you've already got a promotion. I mean, those are the things that I think show up is what are you actually going to do and how hard do you know how to work. So that's so anyway.
Yes and no. Okay, we have one final question up here.
For some context, we have a family business, but my dad knew nothing about business, and he just started it 6 years ago. And so I've worked through every field, starting from the bottom, and now I handle meetings and stuff. Y'all worked in international business. When would you say is a good time to take that next step to go from a local business to international or out of state?
Good question. Dad?
I'd say that we have no way of knowing that based on the information you just gave us. I'd be glad to visit with you afterwards, but I'd just say like, hey, it's a big strategic question. I wouldn't want to like speak out of turn on that. We'd be glad to help you evaluate that. But yeah, sorry. I think it's every business in every category and every situation is going to have probably a little bit of a different answer to that question. So, hey, but congrats on the success. I mean, that's awesome. And to your dad as well. That's awesome. So really great job.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, hopefully what you've got the glimpse of, or why I appreciate each of these gentlemen and their friendship, is I think they understand business. I think a lot of times we hear the word Christianity, we hear the word business, and we associate, well, that must mean the business is ethical. And I don't think that's the standard, right, which we as believers are trying to live. Mm-hmm. And if I'm guessing, this may be a page in Cody's book, right? But this kind of concept, which comes out of practice of being redemptives, right? And stewarding all the resources you have is really what they're attempting to do, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes when you just say, is a business ethical, right? There are a lot of very good organizations very far from God that are very ethical. If that's your standard of the kingdom of God, I think you're selling God short. So from business leaders that are here, from people looking at cultures, from whatever influence you have of what God places under your purview in career, is think about how you can live redemptive, right? Don't stop short of just being ethical. The world's pretty good at being ethical at the end of the day. Not everybody. But as believers, I think there's tremendous opportunity for us to engage the world in a different way, and for us to see God's kingdom here on earth in magnificent ways. So just think about how that works. Cody's got some books up here. I think that's a page in there potentially. Or maybe not.
It's a great example of things we've stolen. So yes, totally. Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, y'all give our panelists a hand, and we'll turn it back over to Ernest. Thank you very much.
Sorry, for putting together a phenomenal panel. And I am from a foreign country, so
We couldn't tell.
so this is really eye-opening. I mean, I haven't heard so much experience being, exposed to us in this particular one forum. But I have even more important thing before I have some gift for our panelists. I want everybody to reach into your phone, into your pocket, and try to find your phone. If you have not been able to find your phone, because I have it. Okay. Okay. So again, thank you so much for coming, and really enjoy your presence. And we would love to be able to continue to be in touch. So we'll be if you have a business card when you walk out, please leave that in the basket out there. For students, you want to get a 1 CLWB point, make sure that you sign in when you walk out. Okay, thank you for coming.